Traffic jitters. National Works Agency announces more traffic changes in anticipation of tomorrow's back-to-school traffic. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on air and online at onespotmedia.com. I'm Herman Green. Also this evening, opposition raises more back-to-school concerns. Teenager among 3 persons shot dead in Clarendon. And fire trucks and rodents. Clarendon councillor says residents' lives are in jeopardy. There's also sports commentary and weather in this newscast, so stay with us. The news in detail after the break. Welcome back to Primetime News. A special welcome to those of you watching online at onespotmedia.com. The National Works Agency, NWA, has been busy throughout the corporate area today putting in last-minute preparations for Monday's back-to-school traffic. There has been high anxiety among parents and school administrators as extensive roadwork projects have been causing traffic nightmares even while schools were on summer break. Well, tomorrow, that traffic is expected to increase significantly, but the NWA insists it will be ready. New traffic lights, new road markings, and new road signs. It's all part of the Detour Road network to be implemented Sunday night ahead of Monday's back-to-school traffic. The aim? To keep traffic flowing without impeding construction works at 3 miles, Hagley Park Road and Constant Spring Road. Communication manager at the National Works Agency, NWA, Stephen Shaw, says the final measures are being put in place.
Well, right now we are going through the corporate area, specific intersections where we are, in the case of Constant Spring Road, West Kings House Avenue, we are getting that signal back up, having regard to the fact that it had been out for about a week. So to that at Shortwood Road, we are going to be rehearsing the timings, changing the timing later on this afternoon in anticipation of the increased traffic flow come tomorrow morning.
But how well do motorists understand these changes? Mr. Shaw says in addition to the changes announced last week, measures are being implemented on Constant Spring Road. Effective 6 o'clock Monday morning, the section of Constant Spring Road between Cassava Peace Road and Mary Brown's Corner will be converted to one-way traffic flow. This will take traffic heading from the direction of Manor Park towards Halfway Tree. Mr. Shaw says this one-way system will be in effect from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on weekdays. With these changes, motorists heading north towards Manor Park will be rerouted along Mannings Hill Road. At the same time, Cassava Peace Road will also be converted to one-way between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. on weekdays. With the other changes, 3 miles in St. Andrew will not be accessible to the over 30,000 vehicles that pass through that intersection each day. If you are driving from the Portmore Toll Road, heading to Hagley Park Road, the new directions will take you onto Marcus Garvey Drive, where other roads in Greenwich Town, including East Avenue, will take you to Spanish Town Road, Waltham Park Road, or Maxfield Avenue. Head of the JCF's Public Safety and Enforcement Branch, PSTEB, SSP Calvin Allen, says its members will be out in its numbers Monday morning to direct motorists. Come tomorrow, grade 6 students will officially be introduced to the curriculum of the Primary Exit Profile PEP examination. The Education Ministry has promised to lend support to schools, but the parliamentary opposition, PNP, has raised concerns over the assessment tasks students are being asked to do. The opposition is calling for adjustments to be made. TVJ's Anthony Lugg has that story.
Despite talks that teachers aren't ready, Education Minister Ruel Reid has made it clear that halting the implementation of the Primary Exam Profile PEP is not an option. The issues surrounding the rollout of the exam have been clouded with much controversy, from the effectiveness of the training for teachers to the accessibility of the curriculum. But speaking at a press conference recently, Chairman of the PNP Commission for Education and Training, Elaine Foster Allen, called for more development activities within the classroom. The PNP also has issues with some of the tasks required of students.
Tasks that the children are supposed to do, those tasks, the assessment task, not so much the curriculum task, but the assessment and performance tasks, will require children to have a wide range of out-of-school experiences. And if the children come to school without having many or some of those experiences in place, they could very well be disenfranchised from the curriculum.
She pointed to a question from the mock exam in June.
The assessment task said, you are going to a resort, or you have been to a resort on the North Coast, and then it goes on to ask all sorts of questions about that experience. How many of our inner city children and rural Jamaican children would have had that experience?
The PNP wants more educational trips for students.
And these don't have to be expensive. It just means you're using your locality, you're using the outside as a classroom. More of those things need to happen for our children. And teachers and principals could put those in as activities that the children must have in order that when they come to doing the assessment, they are able to do those assessments well.
Anthony Log, TVJ News.
In the meantime, opposition spokesman on transport, Michael Phillips, is calling for effective measures to be implemented to protect students along the roads ahead of the reopening of school.
When you have much more, at least 20 to 30% more vehicular traffic on school mornings, this is going to be a challenge for those students, especially those taking public transport, and especially for those who will be coming from rural and trying to get to school at a decent time. We're just calling on the National Works Agency, we're calling on the Prime Minister himself, who is the minister responsible for the National Works Agency, to not wait until it becomes a problem on the first morning of school, but that there's adequate planning be put in place prior to, so that we can have a smooth reopening.
A teenager is among the latest murder victims in Clarendon as gun violence rocks the parish again. The 16-year-old is among 3 persons who were shot dead last night. 3 other persons are also nursing gunshot wounds after gunmen stormed a community shop in Sandy Bay and fired shots at patrons. Here's TVJ's Kean Morgan with the details.
Bloody times 6. This time in a section of Sandy Bay, Clarendon called Inverness. Among the dead, 16-year-old Kevin Rees from the community, 48-year-old former Warren Douglas, and his fiancée, 27-year-old Havana Badal from Bushy Park in St. Catherine. According to the Clarendon Police, about 7:45 Saturday evening, armed men pounced upon a community shop and began firing shots at patrons. After the commotion died down, it was revealed that 6 persons were shot. They were taken to the Mandeville Hospital, where Douglas, Badal, and Rees succumbed to their injuries. It is understood that one of the other 3 men is the son of Mr. Douglas and Miss Badal. He sustained a bullet wound to the left side. The other 2 victims received shot to their left shoulder and left hand. Their injuries are not considered life-threatening. Investigators believe that Mr. Douglas and Miss Badal were the targets of the attack. According to reports, Mr. Douglas and Miss Badal had recently relocated to Sandy Bay from Bushy Park in St. Catherine. Investigators are also probing reports that Mr. Douglas fled to Sandy Bay following a dispute related to allegations of predatory larceny. It is alleged that Mr. Douglas fled Bushy Park with his family and sought refuge in Inverness after being confronted by men from Bushy Park. Preliminary investigations also suggest that Mr. Douglas was followed to Clarendon yesterday by men from Bushy Park. They then returned and launched their attack while he was at the community shop. 25 spent casings and 2 live rounds were recovered from the crime scene. Kean Morgan, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, National Security Minister Horace Chang has announced that the government has set aside nearly $2 billion for the construction of a new police complex in Montego Bay. Dr. Chang, who was speaking at a town hall meeting in Montego Bay Cultural Center recently, said the Mobile West Police Complex will be constructed in Montego Hills, St. James. The $1.9 billion Mobile Reserve Complex will be constructed in 2 phases. March 2019 is the projected timeline for the award of contracts, while construction should begin 1 month later. The complex will comprise approximately 300 residential facilities to house police personnel and will be accessible to all members of the force deployed in that area. Minister Chang noted that the new police complex will facilitate quicker responses from the JCF in the parish, especially after the state of public emergency is lifted. He added that this will also improve policing in the parish. Minority leader in the Clarendon Municipal Corporation and councillor for the Hayes Division in the parish, Sept Barneswell, is this evening calling on the Ministry of Local Government to urgently address what he considers to be two life-threatening matters. Councillor Barneswell says the residents in southeast Clarendon's lives are at stake, either from perishing in an inferno or contracting leptospirosis. We have more in this report.
A seeming increase in fires. 2 fire trucks, but one is defective. It's a troubling situation in Mapen, Clarendon, one which the minority leader in the Clarendon Municipal Corporation, Sept Barneswell, wants to be addressed urgently. He told TVJ News that the only working fire truck in the parish has to be shared sometimes with Mandeville. Mr. Barneswell gave details on the defective unit.
It is supported by a water tender, but because the truck has mechanical difficulties or challenges, the water tender will reach to the fire before the truck and have to stay there and wait until the fire unit get there. We cannot allow a parish to expose to this level of hazard, which could lead to disaster.
And this, he believes, places the parish in a vulnerable position. The minority leader also pointed to uncollected garbage across communities like Kennedy Grove, Money Musk Housing Scheme and Palmer's Cross, which poses a major challenge in the parish. The minority leader says this has led to an increase in rodent infestation, which he fears may give rise to leptospirosis.
The fire that is taking place leads to a different thing, uncollected garbage. Now, if the garbage are not collected on time, persons tend to get rid of it by either burning it themselves or throw it in the drain or the gullies. And that is also a sign for rodent infestation. Can you imagine a person who is diabetic not able to feel anything in their feet and being bitten by a rat? That can lead to leptospirosis, which can spiral off to other health conditions.
And Mr. Barneswell says these matters need to be addressed urgently.
I call upon the Minister of Local Government, Honourable Desmond McKenzie, that he need to address the situation urgently. The parish is exposed to fire and it's also exposed to health hazards. I'm just appealing to the Minister to act quickly and save the parish of Clarendon.
Nick Dawkins, TVJ News.
Should the government intervene in addressing employment practices in the hotel industry? That question after concerns raised in several arenas, including social media, about the number of foreigners being employed by hoteliers in management positions within the industry. But speaking at a recent RJR News Forum, attorney at law Gavin Goff and President General of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union, Senator Kevin Gale, said the government has a system to manage the influx of foreigners who work in the hotel industry.
There is already a system in place which is managed by the Ministry of Labour in terms of work permit system. So not every position is eligible for overseas, to be filled by an overseas or foreign person. One that readily comes to mind is HR managers. The Ministry of Labour will not grant a work permit to bring an HR manager from overseas when there are so many HR managers here locally looking work.
You spoke about having a cap of some sort, and maybe the intent there is to look at that piece of legislation that deals with the free movement of foreign nationals, whether you want it to seek an amendment, if there is no such amendment, that deals with the cap, but it deals with categories of employees that can be granted a work permit where there aren't any skills of that nature within a particular country. So maybe that piece of legislation can be looked at to create some sort of a safeguard to protect our employees.
And still ahead in primetime news, the business review and international news. Please stay with us. The RJR Gleaner Group has given the clearest signal yet that it intends to diversify into the telecoms business when digital switchover is achieved in Jamaica. The company's CEO, Gary Allen, made the revelation at its most recent annual general meeting held at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in St. Andrew. Dashan Hendricks has that report.
Business Review brought to you by I got my mortgage from my dream home. Call for your VMBS mortgage today.
With VMBS, you're sure. Telecoms firms have been entering into media. Locally, Digital's acquisition of the sports channel Sportsmax and Telstar, which has since been morphed into Digiplay, and Flow's push to have its own network and channels have blurred the lines between telecoms and the media. CEO of the RJ Gleaner Group, Gary Allen, says his company will also enter the fray.
The new ecosystem, as I like to refer to it now in media, is one where telecommunications providers are playing on some of the fields that broadcasters would play on, and broadcasters would play on some of the fields that telecoms would play on. So I think that that's a new system that we are going to see roll out in the country.
Getting into telecoms will come with digital switchover in Jamaica. Mr. Allen, who was speaking last week at his company's annual general meeting, said final submissions on the standard required for a digital switchover were submitted to the Information Ministry recently. The submission was made with RJ Gleaner indicating it prefers the American standard.
That one allows for a wide range of different services being provided over that network, and that is really strong.
But he said if the American standard is not chosen, the RJ Gleaner Group will work with whichever is. Now he prepares to spend almost $6 million to achieve digital switchover for his group. $4 million has been spent so far, and with the spending, the possibilities open up for RJ Gleaner to diversify from being a media entity to moving into telecoms.
There are probably triple play plus activities that the American standard is projecting. So yes, once any of the standards that allows for triple play activity is the standard, then definitely that is going to be what digital television broadcasting brings to Jamaica, and in terms of revenue possibilities and so on, it will also improve there.
He said the RJ Gleaner Group's triple play package will feature cable channels, internet service and telephone. Aspects could be seen as early as next year, but full rollout could come after Jamaica's free-to-air broadcasting goes fully digital in 2020. The strategy is part of the group diversifying its income stream.
The shareholders have understood that we are in a changing environment. I think it is very, very important that our regulators and our policymakers understand that credible media, if we are going to survive, we need to be playing on that playing field that the digital landscape now provides. And so the decision making about digital switchover and the different types of services is important to make those decisions now.
The Business Review, I am Dashan Hendricks.
Business Review brought to you by...
And the primetime news package continues with sports right after this break.